Okay, so hopefully you view the scope of agency, authority, lecture. So when we understand that, you also have to understand that, well, at times agents might exceed the scope of their authority, right? Um, Either negligently or intentionally, but that can happen, all right? So let's talk about what happens when that occurs. All right, we'll start with ratification. All right. So when agents exceed the scope of their contractual agreement, um, well, the principal is not bound. They're not contractually obligated. All right. Um, which, when you think about it, can leave the agent on the hook. Not can, it does leave the agent on the hook because you have a party who has contractually agreed, a third party, I should say, who has contractually agreed with the principal, who is not going to get what they contracted for. All right. So when the principal avoids the agent's actions because they exceeded the scope of the agency agreement, that does in fact leave the agent liable for breach of contract, and there can be some liability associated with that. All right. Alternatively, however, the principal can ratify, and this happens after the fact, after the agent has exceeded their scope uh, of what they can do, the scope of their authority. Um, the principal can ratify the unauthorized act, right? And so ratification can be expressed, which is a communication, can be oral or written, saying, I am going to honor the contract that you entered into, even though, agent, you didn't have the authority to do so when you did so. All right, so that would be expressed. Implied is by actions. So taking actions consistent with intent to um, be bound by the contract. All right, and so I've got an example here. Um, Eric has engaged Omar to sell some undeveloped land Eric owns for cash. Omar finds a buyer who has offered a deal including some cash but also another parcel of land. All right, so kind of a like-kind exchange. Omar accepts the deal on Eric's behalf. What are Eric's options? All right, so Omar has exceeded the scope because he wasn't authorized to accept land as compensation for Eric's land. All right. So Eric is not bound unless he elects or ratifies the decision. So reject the deal, not be bound by Omar's actions. That would tend to leave Omar on the hook for breach of contract. All right, or some other claim, maybe a negligence claim from the buyer. All right. Alternatively, Eric can ratify Omar's actions and go through with the deal that Omar agreed to. So accept the cash and the land in exchange for the undeveloped land. All right, so those are the options. That's how ratification works. All right. So in agency, principles can be, well, the level of knowledge that they're dealing with an agent can vary. All right. So if I hire an agent, there may be some negotiation reasons or some business reasons that I don't want the third party to know that my agent represents me. All right. So principles can be disclosed, partially disclosed, or undisclosed. All right. So disclosed. If I'm a third party and I'm sitting down with the agent, I know that I'm dealing with an agent and I know who the agent represents. All right. That is a disclosed principle. All right. Partially disclosed. All right. I'm a third party. I'm sitting with an agent. I know that they're an agent and they represent somebody, but I don't know who that somebody is. So that's a partially disclosed agent. And the undisclosed principle has hired an agent, they're sitting with the third party, and for all the third party knows, they're negotiating or transacting with the actual party who is going to do whatever, be it buy land or enter into some type of contractual agreement. Okay, so why would you use an undisclosed principle? And this is kind of the deep pockets theory. If I own land, or let's just say land, I own land, and I sit down with an agent of Walmart. Walmart has decided to expand into my area. They are interested in purchasing the land. So the third party understands that Walmart is a company of substantial means. So the mere fact that Walmart or their agent is sitting across the table negotiating with you can tend to make the prices go up. So for that reason, it is not uncommon to use either an undisclosed or a partially disclosed principal arrangement, right, to keep the deep pocket cost from increasing. All right. Okay. So why does any of that matter? All right. Well, one of the principles that we need to keep in mind is that when deals go bad, the law is going to provide recourse for the third party. All right. Typically, and this is your general rule here at the top of the screen, for authorized acts, the principal is liable for all authorized acts of the agent. And this is true whether the principal is disclosed, partially disclosed, or undisclosed. And so you might be asking the question, well, if the principal is partially disclosed or undisclosed, how does the third party hold the principal liable? All right. Put a pin in that question. We'll come back to it momentarily. When can the agent be held liable? All right. Well, if there's a disclosed principal, agent's not liable. So there's less risk from the agent perspective in working with a disclosed principal. All right. When there is a partially disclosed agent, and there is some variation in state law, so we'll just go with the general rule here. When working with a partially disclosed principal, well, if the principal cannot be found or the agent cannot be compelled to reveal who the agent is, then guess who's liable? The agent is liable as a party to the contract. So there's a bit more risk associated with working with a partially disclosed principal. Now, other things are still applicable here. So indemnification. So if the agent incurs a cost or a loss, the principal still would have to reimburse for that. But you're relying on that happening. So if the principal flakes, the agent could be left holding the bag. And that's why there's more risk in dealing with a partially disclosed principal. Similar with undisclosed. In an undisclosed principal, you got to think, I mean, and this makes perfect sense. If I'm sitting down with an agent who hasn't told me that they're an agent, I'm assuming that they are the actual party I'm contracting with, and there's a breach or some other tort or negligence claim. Well, who's liable? The agent is, because that's the only party that I know, right? Now, again, indemnification and other Chapter 9 principles are still at play, but the agent is liable. Okay. Unauthorized acts, which we talked about a little bit on the previous slide. Agent's going to be liable for their unauthorized acts. So when an agent exceeds the scope of their agency, they're going to be liable to the third party. All right. And to be quite frank, when an agent has exceeded their scope, the level of disclosure, be it disclosed, partially disclosed, or undisclosed, is irrelevant. Okay. That's it for now. Tune back in next week for more.